Another thing I've noticed is that you take that FTO that you're talking about and talk about it with promotions. You're seeing younger and younger people promoting earlier and earlier in their career. And it speaks to their ambition and their drive, yes. But if you have 5, 6, 7 years on the job, and we used to see this on the CHP too, there were people with 5 and 6 years on it promoting to sergeant, and I don't agree with that. I promoted to sergeant with 15 years, and I had people tell me that was too long, that it retarded my career, that I could have been assistant chief had I promoted earlier. I don't really care about that. The fact is, I waited 15 years because I wasn't ready to be a supervisor yet. It wasn't that I was immature or anything. I just wasn't ready for it. I knew I wanted to do more and experience more. And so now you've got guys that are 5, 6 years in the job. And I'm not saying that they aren't going to be good supervisors. There are some that are for sure. But there's something to be said for the lack of experience when people are promoting. Somebody with 5 years on the job is probably not going to have experienced the same thing that somebody with 10. I'm not unreasonable. I'm not saying wait till you have 15 years on the job. You have to have people promote. But remember in the CHP, we used to see people with 4 and 5 years on promoting, and they were sometimes really not very good supervisors. They were still trying to be people's buddies and friends and so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I ran into, obviously I worked in Hayward for a lot of my CHP career. And in Hayward, the problem with Hayward is it's a transient office, right? It's in the middle of the Bay Area. So a lot of people promote there and they want to get out of there as fast as possible because of the high cost of living, right? So, I would run into stuff where, I have, maybe 5 years on and I have a sergeant who has 4 years on, but our experience is different. And so I'm working like a complex investigation where, I've got maybe 10 stolen cars. It's an organized crime thing. There's surveillance aspects, right? I'm just a patrol guy, but I'm working a complex investigation and I've got this really long, really kind of nuanced report because it's not a straightforward, stolen vehicle report. And then I get a sergeant reading it and they're like, I don't write these reports like this. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't a regular stolen vehicle report. Like there's a complex and nuanced investigation in here with, surveillance and other, search warrants, all that stuff. And they're like, well, I don't write my stolen vehicle reports like this. And I'm like, okay, well, can you provide me a copy of your complex, long-term, organized chop shop investigation so I can copy it? And they're like, oh, I've never written anything like that. And I'm like, okay, well, is the grammar and spelling on this report good? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, why are you correcting my style when you've never done this? Like you're getting into a field of expertise that you have no qualifications in. And I think that happens a lot of times with supervisors is, you're supervising people. I think your job is like, okay, is it out of policy? Is it illegal? Is it some sort of misconduct? No. Okay. If it's a writing style or like a nuanced thing, if all of the elements of the crimes are there, then, if you don't have any expertise in there, you're weighing an opinion in on something that you really don't have any ability to do. You don't have any credentials to do that just because you have a sergeant stripes or a lieutenant bars or you're a captain, doesn't mean you have all of the answers in the world, right? Like a better approach might be, hey, I've never written a report like this. Let me talk to so-and-so who was an investigator for 10 years and see what he thinks, right? Outsource that management if necessary. I ran into that quite a bit at CHP. I'd be, and as I progressed in my career, became, a seasoned investigator. I spent a long time, obviously, in ISUs, and I would run into like sergeants sometimes who like are newly promoted sergeants who maybe they have like relevant time on, but they don't have any relevant experience to what I'm doing. And they're calling me, telling me to do stuff that just makes no sense. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. It makes no sense. And you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but like you're out over your skis, like be a little more, have a little more humility, right? And understand that this is outside your wheelhouse, and that's hard when you have specialty units because, there are things that happen in specialty units that are very different than what happens in like a patrol capacity. And you could spend 20 years as a patrol officer and not understand the complex nuances of, undercover plainclothes work. And, you should be smart enough as a supervisor to not wage an opinion on something that you have no perspective of. So I ran into that a little bit there because you get guys that would promote 2 or 3 years, they maybe 5 years, right? And then I've been in ISU or in these other positions for 7. And then now they're telling me like, hey, I've got 12 years on and they're telling me, hey, I want you to change the way you write your reports. And I'm like, listen, man, that's not going to happen. Like And I think that caused some friction for me at
Well,
some points
I
in
think
my
there's two
career.